This is Warzone Jones here. This is my next video. Today I want to talk about the Attitude Era and the era that is today, the PG era. That's what they call it. People call it the PG era. That's what today's wrestling is. The Attitude Era, the WWF era. So that was the era, to me, that was the greatest era in pro wrestling, regardless of what anybody say. That's just my opinion. The Attitude Era is the greatest era in pro wrestling, in my opinion. And I'm gonna have the words to back up that statement. This era of wrestling, the PG era, it's just not that the era completely sucks. It's just that compared to the Attitude Era, the stuff that they was doing, and nowadays, it just really doesn't compare. I mean, no, it compares. It's just that it was just more enjoyable. I mean, like if everybody's saying that, well, the Attitude Era was the greatest era in pro wrestling, it was just the greatest time in pro wrestling. You had all these superstars who were somewhat on the same level. It's like there's only one guy who's a huge superstar in the WWE. In the PG era, it's really John Cena. I mean, like, who's on his level? Who are they building to be on this guy's level? I mean, I guess it was Jeff Hardy to a certain extent, but Jeff Hardy had left. But the WWF back then, the Attitude Era, they had two guys who was at least on the same level. Bottom line, two guys who was at least on the same level. The Rock and Austin. These guys were at least on the same level as far as popularity. And you guys just had the total package, as far as in-ring ability, talking on the mic, charisma, whatever. These guys pretty much had, they just had that package. They had that larger-than-life, attitude about them. And, and then you have guys like Triple H who came up, and, guys like Chris Jericho, these guys that came up, and The Undertaker, who they enhanced his character. They made him a bigger character. And, they just, even though they probably wasn't as on the level as Rock and Austin, but they were still they were at least somewhat there. They were at least somewhat there, and they could still be compared to them. This era you got John Cena, who's clearly the face of the PG era. A lot of people blame him for that, for the PG era. You got Triple H, he's from the Attitude Era, but you got Batista, you got. Batista, you got John Cena. Like I said, I can't really think of everybody, but all the guys, basically all the people that's in the WWE right now, all the people that's in the WWE right now, Shelton Benjamin, guys like that, CM Punk, John Morrison, and just a certain variety of guys, who really who's on the level of John Cena right now? Really nobody. It's nobody. I'm just going to compare various things from the Attitude Era to the PG Era, which in my opinion, why the Attitude Era is better. The Attitude Era was better because, well, for one thing, they were forced to get their heads out of their ass, basically. They were forced to get their heads out of their ass. Doesn't matter really the reason why, but they were forced. They were forced by WCW. They were forced by WCW to get their head out of their ass. And basically, to do great things constantly on a constant basis. So they made damn sure that they had a great show every Monday Night Raw and every SmackDown. They made damn sure that they had a great night every Monday Night Raw, every SmackDown, every pay-per-view, because they knew, hey, we can be put out of business. So they was forced. They was forced to get their heads out of their ass. Now who's forcing them now to get their heads out of their ass? TNA, they're trying to force them to get their head out of their ass. And I wish they do. I wish they do hope they get their head out of their ass. But, the Attitude Era, there was just so much great things that was going on in the Attitude Era. There was just so many great things that was going on in the Attitude Era, which various wrestlers was doing. Mid-carders, the mid-carders, the mid-card was so important. The mid-card division was so important, and you had a lot of superstars come up from the mid-card division. You ain't really got a lot of superstars coming up from the mid-card division in the PG era like you did in the Attitude Era. They made mid-carders into stars, and they eventually became main eventers or somewhat main eventers. Like Kane, he was somewhat of a main eventer, but he was still a big star. Kane always had things written for him, pretty much like he does now. In the Attitude Era, the people that they made into stars, they made the Dudley Boys into stars. They made the Hardy Boys into the stars. They made Edge and Christian into stars. They made Ken Shamrock into a star. They made Kane. They made him into a star. And so on. They made all these other guys, all these people into stars. These were the guys who were the faces of Raw. As far as mid-card, and these guys were having great matches. The Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys. These guys were having great matches, these great ladder matches, these great table matches. And the stuff that they was doing was just great. The bottom line is, to me, if they're going to have a PG show, they need to have a PG-13 show. I guess that's what you can call TV-14. I'm not for sure, but they need to have one of those. To me, they should have one and the other. But the PG era, it's just like, look at Raw for the last couple of weeks. The Raw for the last couple of weeks has just been stupid. If you compare DX, D-Generation X, to the old DX, whether it was Shawn Michaels and X-Pac and China, or when they got Road Dogg and they got X-Pac and Billy Gunn, and Triple H was running DX. That DX compared to this DX, it does it really doesn't compare. For those of you who have watched DX back then. So for the fans of DX now, the new generation fans of DX, you should know. You should know. DX compared to now, back then, DX back in the Attitude Era, and the DX now, the PG era, the PG DX is, they don't compare, period. I don't care even if it is Triple H or Shawn Michaels. They don't compare. It's not good. It's not that good. They basically doing the same thing night after night. Plugging this, plugging that, plugging this, plugging that, plugging this. It's getting out of hand. It's just stupid in my opinion. But the PG era, there's really only one big megastar, and it's just John Cena. That's it. There's only one big megastar. There's only one guy that all the people are really paying to see, and it's really just John Cena. That's it. It's really just John Cena, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong. You got all these guys like Batista. He's a megastar, but he still ain't on John Cena level. It's not like when I said Rock and Austin. He like either John Cena's Austin. It's not like he's Rock. He really isn't. He really is. In my opinion, he's not. Not because he ain't get all this charisma or whatever, and he's not as wrestler as a Rock. He's just not on his level. Period. A lot of people tell you, man, I'd rather be John Cena than a lot of those kids tell you they'd rather be John Cena than they do Batista. Not just because even when he was a babyface. Period. There's really nobody. There's just one big megastar. They say Raw is John Cena's house, which is understandable. Raw is John Cena's house. Raw is basically booked to make John Cena look good. It's not, you gotta, isn't that true? It's pretty much true. Back in the Attitude Era, when they had all these guys coming up, it wasn't just really built to build. It wasn't really just built to make Austin, main event, like he was the star attraction. He was bringing in all the fans. But after a while, various guys came up, such as The Rock. He came up, so he wasn't the only guy. You had The Undertaker. You had Triple H and DX and all the stuff they was doing, and you had a couple of other guys. So it's just that the Attitude Era, it was just so much raw stuff that was going on. There was so much interesting stuff that was going on. And then, they was going head-to-head with WCW, and they had the Wrestling War. The Wrestling War, enough was just what made the Attitude Era interesting, period. Which made Raw interesting, period. On Monday Night Raw, back then, it was like an event. Monday Night Raw, on Mondays, hey, you should be watching wrestling. That's the hottest thing going on in 2 hours, in my opinion. I made sure that I was watching wrestling. Period. On Monday night at 8 o'clock, here in Chicago, Illinois, I made sure that I watched wrestling at 8 o'clock, and I remember if I missed Raw, I remember when I was a kid, 12 years old, I used to get angry. I used to get angry, and I used to, so mad, tears coming out of my eyes. But hey, I was a little kid, but I just don't feel that way no more if I miss Raw. Because the PG era, just look at the stupid stuff they doing. If you've seen a ladder match between Shelton Benjamin and Christian, they had to stop the blood because of they had to stop the match because Christian was bleeding a little bit. Come on. That was ridiculous. The stuff that they doing in the PG era, at least compared to me, in my opinion, the PG era, the stuff they doing compared to the Attitude Era, You know, it's just not as good, and that's why we trash the WWE. That's why we get pissed off, because we remember how good the Attitude Era was. We remember all the great stuff that they were doing. Remember all the great stars that they had, bottom line. And, you know, some of us might get pissed off at it because we grew up watching those guys. And, you know, these guys now, you know, to me, it's not, well, yes it is. It's sometimes crap, and most of the time it's crap. It's just compared to the Attitude Era, a lot of stuff that they was doing compared to now is just crap. It literally turning crap. But that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion. They ain't got nobody to force them to get their heads out of their ass. But that's just my opinion. This is Warzone Jones. If you don't agree with me, comment. I'll gladly argue with you. This is Warzone Jones. Please comment. Please subscribe.